just like seeing her for the first time.
The atmosphere in the evaluation arena grew heavier as the challenge advanced to its next stage. The protagonist stood tall, his expression calm, as he conjured a mystical resonance through his harp-like weapon. This time, he summoned a unique, musical spell, its sound echoing throughout the vast arena like ripples spreading across a still lake. The swarm of insects rushed toward him with relentless speed, their wings buzzing with a sharp, menacing tone. Yet, as soon as they entered the radius of the spell, their movements faltered. The notes from his harp vibrated in the air, weaving invisible threads of power. One by one, the insects stiffened mid-flight, their wings unable to respond, and then they dropped helplessly to the ground. In mere moments, the threat was neutralized. The protagonist, satisfied with the result, believed it was enough. He lowered his weapon slightly, his face calm and confident. But outside the battlefield, the audience erupted into astonishment. Murmurs and gasps filled the air as the crowd tried to comprehend what they had just witnessed. To them, the performance was nothing short of extraordinary. He had once again surpassed their expectations. In the officials' viewing chamber, the representatives of the districts reacted sharply. EQ, the one responsible for the third district, narrowed his eyes at the boy. He had already noticed the sharp gaze of his rival fixed on the protagonist. Not willing to lose ground, EQ quickly asserted, "This one will belong to my team. I want him for the third district?" His declaration immediately sparked tension. The leader of the rival district countered, claiming the boy was destined for them instead. Their voices grew louder, clashing back and forth, each determined to claim the protagonist. The dispute escalated until Shenjiki, representing the fourth district, attempted to intervene. "Enough," he said firmly, trying to put an end to the bickering. But instead of listening, the two rivals turned on him, combining their voices in unison to tell him to keep quiet. The air between them was thick with hostility, almost boiling over into a full-blown confrontation. It wasn't until the professor, the senior authority presiding over the examination, raised his voice that the commotion finally died down. With a cold, commanding tone, he ordered them to stop the argument immediately. Once silence was restored, the professor's attention shifted to the leader of the second district, who calmly suggested an alternative. His words carried a sharp edge of calculation. "If the boy is so impressive, then increase the difficulty. Let us see how far he can truly go." The professor considered it for a brief moment. Then, with a nod of approval, he agreed. The challenge would be raised once again. Among all those present, none seemed more pleased than Zhao, who smirked with satisfaction, his eyes gleaming as if he were watching a trap unfold exactly as planned. Back in the arena, the announcer's voice boomed with excitement, carrying the news to the entire crowd. "Attention! The challenge level will now increase. Prepare yourselves. The next test is level 5. The doors at the far end of the arena groaned open, and what emerged sent a wave of shock through everyone watching. Several massive, fierce lizards, their scales dark and glistening under the lights, slithered into the battleground. Alongside them, flocks of thunderbirds spread their enormous wings, electricity crackling across their feathers. The air itself seemed to vibrate with tension, sparks dancing dangerously across the stone walls. The audience could hardly believe their eyes. They had never seen a combination like this before. "This is insane," someone whispered, their voice trembling. "How is he supposed to fight all of them?" Yet in the middle of the arena, the protagonist remained composed. His gaze swept over the monsters without a flicker of fear. His opponent outside the field sneered, calling him arrogant for standing so confidently in the face of such overwhelming odds. The battle began instantly. The lizards charged forward with terrifying speed, their claws tearing into the ground, while the thunderbirds above unleashed violent streaks of lightning. The air shook with each strike of thunder, the arena rumbling under their combined assault. But the protagonist did not falter. He lifted his harp once again, fingers gliding effortlessly across its strings. A deep, resonant chord filled the air, and from the sound, shimmering silhouettes of ethereal warriors materialized. One after another, they appeared in great numbers. their spectral weapons gleaming as they charged headlong into the fray. The clash was immediate and brutal. The summoned warriors met the fierce lizards in direct combat, steel against scale. For a moment, they managed to hold their ground, pushing back against the monstrous force. But the thunderbirds above intervened, unleashing devastating bolts of lightning that rained down upon the warriors. Crackling energy surged through them, breaking their formation and scattering their ranks. Not only were the summoned warriors falling, but the structure of the arena itself began to tremble. The walls bore scorch marks, fragments of stone cracking. Under the repeated impacts of thunder, the protagonist narrowed his eyes, instantly recognizing the danger. Without hesitation, he pulled back, retreating a few steps, not to flee, but to avoid the arcs of destructive lightning. His movements were swift and precise, weaving through danger with such agility that the audience could hardly believe their own eyes. Gasps filled the stands. He dodged that perfectly. One spectator whispered in disbelief, repositioning himself to a safer vantage point. The protagonist steadied his stance once more. His harp gleamed under the sparks of lightning, still dancing in the air. With unwavering determination, he raised it again, preparing another strike. The sound of the strings reverberated like the toll of war drums as he unleashed a new wave of power. This time, the music was sharper, more forceful, each note striking like a blade. The sound wave surged forward, colliding directly with the monstrous lizards and thunderbirds. The battle was far from over, but the arena had become his stage, and every string he played carried the promise of defiance against overwhelming odds. Once more, the protagonist unleashed the power of his harp, sending sharp waves of sound that tore through the battlefield. The vibrations struck the advancing monsters with unrelenting force, breaking their formation entirely. The beasts, once confident and aggressive, now faltered. Collapsing under the weight of the music-born power, the audience erupted into stunned silence, unable to comprehend what they had just witnessed. This wasn't merely skill, it was something that transcended their expectations. For someone so young to display such mastery over music-based abilities and to defeat high-caliber monsters of this level was unheard of. Shock gave way to awe, and even his rivals, who had been mocking him earlier, were forced to admit his astonishing talent. The announcer's voice boomed across the arena, filled with excitement and disbelief. Han Jan has emerged victorious in the Level 3 challenge. His declaration was met with thunderous applause, the entire stadium roaring with admiration. In the high-ranking officials' chamber, where the leaders of the great districts observed the evaluation, the atmosphere grew tense, yet fascinated. They too were impressed not only by the protagonist's combat ability, but by the uniqueness of his approach. To use music as a weapon in battle was rare enough, but to wield it with such precision and destructive potential was extraordinary. Even more astounding was the fact that he had achieved all this despite forming a contract with someone ranked as low as rank ETH professor. Deeply intrigued, called for one of his subordinates. "A Fu," he commanded. A man stepped forward, immediately bowing to his master. "Yes, Professor. What are your orders?" "You possess the ability to identify the true rank of contractors," the professor said, his tone sharp. "I want you to analyze Cha." Afu obeyed, focusing his energy and attempting to peer into Cha's spiritual signature. Yet, after several tense moments, he frowned and shook his head. "I cannot determine it. It appears to be a situation similar to that of Miss Ling Zhen. She was identified as rank E by the Awakening Stone, but her true talent defies that reading. The discrepancy is baffling." The professor leaned back, eyes narrowing. "Ling Zhen. Yes. She became powerful because she signed a contract with Han Jan. If what you say is true, then this is something bizarre indeed. Perhaps it is necessary to arrange a meeting between Ling Zhen and this boy. By the way, what was the name of Ling Zhen's talent?" Afu bowed again before answering. "It is called Shen's Cauldron." Back in the arena, the protagonist stood tall, his expression unwavering, instead of resting on his laurels after such a victory. He stunned the official by declaring that he wished to continue. "You want to proceed?" the official asked, his brows rising in surprise. "Yes," the protagonist replied firmly. "I wish to test my limits." Though reluctant, the official nodded, giving his approval. Soon after, the gates opened once again, and the level 4 test commenced. New monsters poured into the arena, each fiercer than the last. Yet the protagonist did not falter. With his harp resonating like a weapon forged of pure sound, he cut them down mercilessly. One after another, the monsters fell, their bodies littering the battlefield as proof of his superiority. Still unsatisfied, the protagonist declared aloud that he sought a true challenge. He wanted to feel pressure to measure the true extent of his abilities. Thus, the challenge level increased once more. At every stage, he proved himself greater than his enemies, slicing apart waves of creatures until the entire arena was filled with nothing but corpses. At last, the official intervened. "You have already reached level 6. You may stop now if you wish." But the boy shook his head, his voice cutting through the heavy air. "No, I wish to advance to level 7. The official's face darkened. "You are insane. No one has ever succeeded at that level. Even attempting it borders on suicide." The audience gasped at his boldness. Whispers spread rapidly. Everyone knew that level 7 was a test of legend, one that no student had ever cleared. The risk was monumental, yet the protagonist stood unshaken in the official's chamber. The leader of the first district spoke gravely. "In my time, the evaluation system was only challenged up to level 6. That itself was a new record, one that has stood for 50 years. The leader of the second district leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "This boy, he is extraordinary. His talent is wasted anywhere else. I want him for my team." Immediately, an argument broke out between them. Each district head determined to claim the protagonist. The leader of the first district proposed a competition to decide ownership, and the leader of the second district accepted without hesitation. Meanwhile, back in the arena, the official responsible for overseeing the challenges confronted the protagonist. His tone was cold, but also carried a trace of respect. "If you insist on taking this challenge, I cannot stop you. But you must understand this level is impossible. Should you succeed, it will be nothing short of a miracle." Han Jan's expression did not waver. "I am aware of the risks. I'd only ask for a short time to recover before I begin. The rules allow no more than 10 minutes of rest." The official replied firmly. "I do not need 10 minutes, the protagonist countered calmly. "I only need enough time for a sound." With that, he plucked the strings of his harp. A soothing resonance filled the air, enveloping him in waves of healing energy. Before the astonished eyes of everyone watching, his wounds closed and his stamina returned, all through the sheer power of his sonic abilities. The officials exchanged incredulous looks, murmuring among themselves. In the viewing chamber, the district leaders continued their dispute, each refusing to back down. Just then, Li Jingshan, the leader of the 5th district, entered the conversation. His voice was measured, but carried great authority. "Is it truly wise to send such a versatile contractor to the front lines? This boy is capable of absorbing spiritual energy and healing injuries. He would be far more valuable under my command." The others turned to him sharply. "So you want him to?" one asked with suspicion. Li Jingshan shook his head. "I am not here to fight over him. I only say this: he belongs with me, and under my leadership, his abilities will shine where they are needed most." But his words did nothing to stop the brewing conflict. The others refused to yield, each ready to battle for the boy, if not for the stern intervention of their master. The old man's voice resonated with wisdom and authority. "Enough. Do not forget the 8 great districts of Daxia. Each bear their own responsibilities and contributions. The first district fights decisive battles. The second district strategizes. The third district expands territories. The fourth explores and seeks truth. The fifth saves lives. The sixth guards the critical passages. The seventh traverses the oceans, and the eighth remains behind the scenes. These 8 districts are the pillars of Daxio. They are the very sky under which our people live." He paused, his gaze turning sharp. There was once consideration of creating a 9th district, but that decision was never made. At this, Wang raised his voice curiously. "Are you truly suggesting the creation of a 9th district?" Li Jingshan, however, shook his head slightly. "There is no need to ask. When you look at this boy, the answer becomes clear on its own. All eyes turned back to the arena, where the protagonist stood, preparing for the challenge that struck fear into all who knew of it, the dreaded level 7.